Welcome to the Mama's Well podcast. We are digging deep into the gifts and the gaps of foster and adoption. I'm Tara Hutton, and I'm glad you're here. Mama's Well. Yes, she is. Tonight, we are not in the studio. We are in my office. And it's late outside here, and girls are being tucked in right now. And so I'm enjoying this quiet, cozy evening. And I'm looking forward to a conversation with my guest, who is another not foster. She's an adoptive mom, but I met in this foster adoptive journey on Facebook, actually. And she lives in Australia. And so you're going to see in a minute, it is bright and sunny and beautiful. It's a Monday night here, and it's a Tuesday morning for her. So I think that is so cool. And we're going to talk about, I was so intrigued by this woman. Her name is Melissa Christian. And hello, Melissa, there you are. You just got us.
Hi, how are you?
Let's move here. Let's open here. There we go. I'm not super good with the technology, but there's Melissa. Look at that beautiful sunshine back there.
Yes, it's a beautiful Tuesday morning here.
Thank you, Melissa, for joining me on your Tuesday morning and my Monday night. I think that's so neat.
So welcome. Yes, it is. It's so cool to be speaking to you in America.
Yeah. And I want to hear about what's going on in Australia in a minute. I want to explain a little bit more about how we met.
Sure.
I'm trying to remember the post I read. Do you remember exactly what it was? I was intrigued. I was intrigued by something that you said, and it was extremely compassionate. And I think I messaged or commented on it. And I wanted to know more about what you were talking about and what you were sharing. And it had to do with this, it had to do for me with compassion, something I heard that just triggered that you were working through some compassion toward yourself. And,
yes.
And so we ended up having for me, an early morning coffee on my back porch. And for you, yes. I think it was a late evening. I think I tucked you in that night.
Yes,
you weren't drinking coffee. You were going to bed. But it was
yes.
a beautiful conversation. And I asked you if you would mind joining me on this podcast, because I want to share your whole story. It's so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. So my compassion towards other mums comes from me recognizing that I need to have compassion on myself. And I guess some of my journey is quite raw. And I felt a lot of guilt with my first child and how the adoption panned out. And it wasn't really until I went through Circle of Security that it came up that there's no need to be guilty for things that have happened in the adoption that are not my fault. It's how the adoption worked at the time. And I just felt so burdened down with the guilt of my son's adoption and all that went with it. The pressure of me being that perfect mum, the pressure of society, of a family looking on, just being judged. And so I realized during the Circle of Security that I need to have compassion on myself. And my child isn't suffering because of it. I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that compassion then came towards, what other mums are probably going through the same thing. We don't need to.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what I heard that day. And it's a similar journey that I'm on, which is probably why I was intrigued. As a mom, we do carry so much guilt because for some reason in our mind, we think we're supposed to do this really incredible thing. It's so huge and it's so powerful and it's so important. And we just want to do it right. And there's
absolutely,
I don't know if there's a right, there's certainly a lot to learn through parenting. And so will you take us back and just from the beginning, tell us your journey, because it's quite a beautiful journey. Lovely, as you say in Australia.
Oh, yes, it is today.
It's lovely. Okay, so tell us about, start from the beginning. You and your husband, Dan, and you, how did you wind up on this adoption journey?
Okay, so like a lot of mums, I started off with a dream of a young girl. I was age 4. I had a huge imagination, and my imagination was that I was going to get married, I was going to have kids, going to live on a farm, had the picket fence, the whole works. So life goes on as it does. I sadly struggled with period pain to an excessive extent, which didn't really trigger anything except for me. Met Dan when I was in my late teens. We got married in our early 20s. And yes, I was struggling with this period issue. But, you know, that's kind of girls do, don't you? And come to the point where I discovered in an encyclopedia that I had endometriosis. So I went to the doctor, and sure enough, after some investigation, yes, I woke up from operation saying, yes, we found endometriosis. So yes, I have an answer to all my pain and suffering. Great. And of course, they did mention, you know, the chances of having children. You might just want to go ahead and do it now, or just, you know, go through some medical intervention and hold off for a bit. Well, I was put on the pill for 6 months continuously. I did not cope with that. And I went, you know what, Dan, I can't do this anymore. PMS is like tenfold from what it's been forever. I need to quit. And he said, yep, go for it. I agree. I know what he meant by that. So he then turns to me and says, but this means we could have children, right? I was like, yeah, you okay with that? Yeah, we're okay with that. So sure. So, you know, my mum had lost a child before me. I'm the eldest of her 3 children. And I figured that most women, you know, they lose one. So that was fine. I gave myself 6 months to probably fall pregnant and potentially have a miscarriage. And then a year went by, and 2 years went by, and 3 years. I'm like, maybe we should just go check this out. And oh yeah, you're fine. You're young. You're under 30. Forget about it. Enjoy your life. Off you go. Said all the doctors, more than one. So fine. We're okay. But you're not okay. And why am I, being young, told that it's okay to not worry about not falling pregnant after 3 years? So what if I'm only 24, 25? My plan was to have my kids well before 25. I wanted to be a young mum, grow up young and energetic with them. And I'm told that, no, wait till after 30. Well, I didn't like that. And of course, not long, a little black bird comes and sits on your shoulder and nitpicks at you every time you see a pregnant woman, every time you see a newborn baby, and of course the depression and all of that came down. And I struggled through that. It was heartbreaking. You know, sister-in-laws fall pregnant, friends fall pregnant, second child, third child, and here I am just in my own world of just drowning. My whole desire was to have children as a young 4-year-old girl, and here I am in my 20s, and why me? Why? What have I done? What's happening? And, you know, we never blamed each other for this. It was just us. And I guess I internalized it, and it was all me. Because I did have endometriosis, don't forget. Mm-hmm. So we hit our 30s, and it's just, horrible. Just this bird, he just get bigger, and he just sit there and he just pick at you. And, you know, you go shopping and you get out the car, you go into the shopping center, and there's pregnant babies, pregnant women and little babies. And I turn around and go home and just cry. I just couldn't handle it, just drowning in it. Anyway, we moved interstate, and a friend that I had known years before, I knew they were adopting a little girl from India. And while we had moved interstate, they had adopted this little girl. And so we moved back, and she's now about the age of 9 or 10. And they've got 4 biological children, blonde hair, blue-eyed, and this little Indian girl. And she was just one of them. There was no difference. She just sat there with them as part of the family. And that really just hit me. because I had started questioning adoption. My husband has an adoptive brother from Thailand, but me accepting adoption was me giving up on my own hopes and dreams of my own child. And that was a big thing for me. So even though I'd questioned adoption and maybe, I just felt, how can an interracial child potentially fit in with my family? I'm not racist in the slightest in that aspect, but just how was that going to fit in? And here's this little girl, just one of the kids. So the mum says to me, "Oh, you're not thinking about adoption, are you?" No. Well, actually, maybe I am. So that was the start of the journey into adoption. So we were 7 years trying for a child, every means possible, doing all the crazy things you're told to do, trying to fall pregnant. And we started the adoption journey in 2008.
But you have been waiting 6 years. I mean, that's incredible. And then they had this special need. I think you were at the part of the story where they have a special needs list. Okay.
Yes. So they're trying to upgrade their system, and it was just getting really frustrating. And so I started actually looking online myself at children being offered up, because America's got some really good websites, and you guys are really open about this, whereas Australia is very closed on adoption. It's not something we talk about here at all.
Okay.
Australia-wide, I'm speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see from the American websites of the children who were being offered up in China. And I did actually point one out to a social worker here, saying, look, this little girl had been accepted by somebody in America, but was put back on the list again. I said, look, she looks great to me. Little did I know at that very moment, a little boy had been offered up from Taiwan with a minor heart condition. And my social worker was going through the paperwork of accepting him for us.
Ah.
I had no clue. She didn't give me any idea. So I got to the point where I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, God's will for my life is God's will, and I need to accept that. And as much as I can get myself wound up and depressed and upset about it all, whatever his will is for my life, I'm just going to, amen. 2 days later, I got a phone call from my social worker to say that this little boy, are you interested? It's like, yes, he's my son. I didn't know anything about him except he was a little boy. And he was from Taiwan. Where's Taiwan? I don't even know where Taiwan is. I've never heard of it before. How narrow-minded are we? But I just knew then that he was mine. And so, of course, ring up my husband, quick, get home from work. We've got some paperwork to do. We've got a little boy. So I read through his file about his medical condition, which was minor from what we could tell. And then social worker said, I'm going through some photos. Is that okay? I went, no, don't show me, because if I see he's adorable, then I'm never going to be able to refuse what the medical report says that the doctors haven't yet explained to us. So my husband looks at him and goes, oh, wow. I'm like, oh, what does that mean? He goes, oh, you've got to see. I'm like, nah, don't. I can't. He goes, no, you've got to see. So he did. Oh, my goodness. He was the most adorable baby I've ever seen. Just, done.
Perfect.
So, yes. So, of course, we were like, yes, doctor reports were all good. And, of course, every adoption is a risk. Yes. We don't care. We're going with this. So because Taiwan was not on our radar, we had to then apply to Taiwan. We had to then go through all the paperwork, loops and hoops and jumps, which was about 9 months worth.
Okay.
And we did all that. So we found out in November. And then hubby was working in Adelaide. We were 6 hours north of Adelaide in the middle of a desert living at the time. And I was heading back to the desert from the city. And I got a phone call from a social worker halfway home. She said, oh, we've just got a phone call from Taiwan. They want you to attend court next week. Can you be there by the weekend? Yep, we can be there by the weekend. How do you fly to Taiwan? Was there a flight to Taiwan? What do we do? Oh my goodness. So
how long is the flight from Australia to Taiwan?
Wow, you can fly from Brisbane, and it's about an 8-hour flight to Taiwan.
8 hours.
Living in Adelaide, we had the other option of flying to either Singapore or to Hong Kong and then across to Taiwan.
Okay.
So I rang up a flight center and said, I need flights to Taiwan. I don't care how you get us there, just get us there. And of course, hubby's in the middle of this huge project at work. He's like, I can't take time off. I'm like, here you are. Even if you're not, I'm going. So we had a crazy week. Got 2 baby showers thrown in that week pretty much, and from work, and it was like pack up passports, get myself back to Adelaide again.
Yeah.
And quit work for a little while.
Did you think that when you went that you were going to bring your son home?
No.
Okay.
We knew although in my heart of hearts, I was begging that they would change their mind and say, you know what, this boy needs to go home with you today.
Okay.
But I knew that wasn't going to happen.
Okay.
Australia, sadly, is one of the countries that is really slow on the immigration side of it. And with politics, we have to wait the 8 weeks, generally speaking, for them to get their paperwork organised. Our lovely friends in Sweden and Denmark and European countries get to stay there, and they get to take their children home. And I understand for Americans, you guys even have to wait longer to take your children home, which is why not many Americans adopt from Taiwan, as my understanding is. So yeah, we knew we had about an 8-week wait.
Yeah. So you get there, and the reason that you're going, from what I understand, is you have to attend a court hearing.
Yes.
Yes.
So we were one of the first from Australia to attend court. Taiwan was starting to change their process, and they wanted the adoptive families to attend court so they could speak to us personally and meet us, because they were starting to change their adoption system, and they wanted more local adoptions in Taiwan.
Okay.
That's a whole nother story.
Okay. So you get there, you go to court.
We get there, we meet our son, we get to have 3 whole days with him. We return him every evening to the Muan orphanage where he was living, but we had him all day for these 3 wonderful days. And then they prep us for court on what is possibly going to be asked to us and what our answers should be. So we went along to court. The judge, he asked us 3 questions. What do you think of your son? Love him. He's amazing. He's adorable. What do you think of Taiwan? Love Taiwan. The people, the food. We were blown away by Taiwan as a nation. It was a beautiful place. And did we promise to care for our child and look after our child to the day we die? Yes, of course we do.
I don't want to not tell about your, there's more than your son, right? You end up going back to Taiwan.
We did.
And you adopt 2 girls that are siblings, right? I think they were like 8 months and they
just over 2.
Just over 2, and then a 10-month-old or something like that. They were pretty close.
Yeah, they're 14 months apart, both the girls.
Okay.
Yeah. So we adopted the little one you just saw before, Gracie. Yeah. We adopted her on her first birthday. Okay. And her sister was 2 years and 4 months.
So I'm going to fast forward your story, because I want them to hear, first of all, when I read your story, I just want to point out the things that I read that were
perfect,
like really, really touching and moving to me. One of the first things that I recall is when you got, it's Jai, right?
Yes.
When you get Jai home, you experienced a bond with him, but then you began questioning. You had some expectations that maybe you weren't even aware of. Yes. And you began kind of questioning yourself and the bond that you were having. And am I saying this right?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It was like I want to see, sure. Can I read something here?
Of course you can. Yes.
I want to I highlighted a lot of things, so I want to make sure that I'm in the right place. But you were also, just to clarify, you were also an early childhood that was your schooling, is in early childhood and childhood development and
absolutely.
attachment
Very
and things like that. Yeah,
yes,
very
absolutely.
experienced. You were a child, you were like a director of an early childhood program of some sort.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
So, and I can relate because I am an early childhood teacher as well.
Perfect.
And you say in here, you know, when you're talking about motherhood, the chapter is Motherhood Begins. Yes. And it says, when we hold him close, he just sits there, never holding on to us, not drawing in close and snuggling or cuddling. This is quite unnerving and brings an insecurity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Totally relate to that. I'm going to keep going for a minute. What am I doing wrong? What is not working out in our attachment building and bonding? I find myself under the impression of having to present a perfect picture of motherhood, all rainbows and roses, but underneath I am aware that I am not feeling those maternal feelings that I am expected to feel or should be experiencing. I love my boy, but why does it not feel like that lovey-dovey mothering experience? I feel I must have him behave or act perfectly, appropriately, and unrealistically in public, even though I know he is such an angel and not a naughty streak in him. I constantly feel watched and judged. Is it because of my experience of working with children? You know, and you kind of go on about, you know, just questioning yourself and being so hard on yourself and not understanding what it was that you were experiencing. And I could relate to that. You know, you have so much love. You've been waiting for 13 years and all of a sudden, like, it doesn't feel like what you thought it was going to feel like.
Absolutely. Yes. It was I guess a huge letdown, really, because you have all this build up. Oh, my son, you know, this love, this romantic view of motherhood that you have dreamt about for so long and craved, and it's not there. So if it's not there, I guess it's my fault that it's not there, isn't it?
Right.
I mean, he's a child. That's what children need. That's what they want. He's a little baby still, only 14 months old, probably, you know, maybe 2-3 months younger than that, really, in his everything else about him. So I guess it's my fault. I mean, I've worked with children for years. I've had this experience with other children who are not my own. So why is it this child who should be feeling this and needing this and wanting this? It's my fault, not his fault.
Yeah.
So yes, I really took it really hard to myself. And I guess, you know, just, yeah, it became about me and the guilt of not being, there's something wrong with me. It was, yeah.
And I want to interject that a lot of times as foster, I mean, I'm feeling this, like even in my recent podcast I just released, I talked about this, but there's this pressure, and it's not put on by any one person. It's like a cultural pressure or a societal pressure. And then when you adopt children who've come from trauma, you know, there's this other thing that you know, it's about the children, and it should be, because there's so much to understand about trauma, and there's so many ways in which that we need to be aware and be able to help our children. And on the other side of that, we're walking around unknowingly carrying some like we're supposed to be Jesus, you know, to these children. And then when we can't, because we aren't, you know, we feel so much guilt and shame, honestly.
We do. Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because I know I study, you know, I have books on these shelves that I just devour because I just want to know how to help. And then when something doesn't go the way, when the connection's not there, when the moment, when the approach I took seems to fail, it's like you just feel lost and responsible. And so I could really feel that in what you wrote here. And I think that I want to go on with when you adopted the girls, but this feeling kind of continues for you, right? Throughout this
Yes,
journey.
it does. Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said to you before, so I had a social worker offered to me through the adoption, who is specially for adoptive mothers. And I had a conversation with her about it. But she didn't understand and she didn't get it. And it just come to me, like I went through this stage before the girls of just really wanting to find support and not knowing where to find the support, not knowing who to contact. I reached out to Relationships Australia, which is a big non-for-profit company, and they are for every aspect of helping people financially, underprivileged, and adoption is one of their areas that they do work at, and they're a great team. But I just didn't find anything for me as a mum. And it just felt there had to be something out there, and there had to be somebody who got it. So I knew there was a need inside of me, and I knew that I really had to go and find this need and have it met by someone who understood.
Yeah. And you, when you start, you let fast forward and tell like about the girls. And then, because it was after the girls that you just, more, it started to fall apart even more. You're with your husband, and like,
oh yeah,
the pressure was building, and this unaddressed guilt and shame, and I would say grief that you had not processed is building. And I think that a lot of us right now, probably listening, are in the throes of this, because I mean, surely you and I aren't the only ones in this whole wide world that feel this.
We're not.
This is not something that just resolves for me. This kind of shows up again and again, but I've seen people talk about these kinds of things and get shut down very quickly because they're making it about themselves versus the child. And I am, yes. I don't think it has to be an either or. I think it can be the and both. Like, I think
absolutely
it's so important that honestly, if we fall apart,
where's the children in all of this?
In trouble,
Exactly. And if the mother's not in a good space in her mental health well-being, how do you expect to have a successful adoption or foster or any other situation? You can't. And you're exactly right in what you're saying. We've got to be able to speak up. We've got to be able to have our voices heard, and we've got to be accepted and recognized and valued for what we go through as mothers. Absolutely. And of course, not taken away from the children, not taken away from adoption, a trauma, foster trauma, any of the background with the children, not taking away any of that, but we also deserve to be heard and recognized and helped and understood. And if I'm the one voice that can speak out for you, anyone else, everyone else listening, please
I
accept it and take it.
I think the more that we do talk about it, then it offers permission for other people to say,
absolutely,
I feel this way too. I'm struggling here too.
And it's okay to be like that. It's okay.
Yeah. But it is really hard.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It is.
And so, hey, speaking of hard, okay, the next part of the story, I can't even fathom. But you said, we've been home for 4 weeks when we get a call that shakes us to our very core. We have been accused of the unthinkable, and the Child Protection Department has reached out to our adoption agents, and they are suddenly threatening to take our children away with no to little explanation or evidence. What the heck? What is this about? I can't even imagine.
It's blindsided us completely. A family member who hadn't met the girls at all, who has hardly had anything to do with us. She herself was in an adoptive family with an adopted sibling, and they had a not very successful adoption. No, leave it please, Mum's talking. somehow her conversation with this person showing up to find out support for us took everything in a completely bizarre way and had it that we were not parenting very well in a extremely negative manner. And so we were blindsided by this. Like, we just got these 2 girls home. We're just struggling to find our feet and build attachments, and it was just, knocked us for a six. Like, we just, I don't know. I don't even know how we got through those few days. And then, of course, they come and had a meeting with us, and they're trying to question the kids. And it's just like, kids say things that aren't always taken in the right way.
Sure.
And they knew that what the kids were saying were not right. But they just made it into this big thing. And, thankfully, we got past it. Our social work came back and she spoke to us and she said, I think this is completely out of context. I know you guys, and I know that this is not what has gone on at all. And the 2 social workers who come and questioned us about all this stuff, like, they made some really false allegations against us. They were completely out of line. And having dealt with mandated and questioning, or not questioning children, but understanding abuse in all the different forms and all of that, I knew they were out of line in what they were asking us. It's like, you can't come to a family and say this sort of stuff. So
gosh, I mean, I can't even imagine. That's 4 weeks after you came back with the girls. I cannot imagine the stress of trying to navigate just having the girls and Jai and the adjustment, and then
completely. And like Leah was speaking Mandarin, so we had to translate everything for her into Mandarin, like to ask her to drink, to go to the toilet, to bed, nap, bottle. Everything was translated. So we're trying to learn some Mandarin, help her learn English. Jai's got all these massive issues. Mummy's talking, darling. Yes, of course you can do whatever you want right now. Pet my fingernails. Of course you can. With a lip balm. Perfect. So just so much going on. And of course, your own self, lack of sleep, lack of, I don't even know, my head's spinning right now just thinking about how we even got through those first 6 months, really.
So how long did that ordeal go on? Just, it was pretty short-lived, right?
It was about 4 weeks all up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And how did you move past? I mean, gosh, there's shame in that. I mean, there's shame in that, even though
we didn't talk to anyone about it, obviously, because it was just, even to ourselves, like, I don't even know how, as a couple, that we really support each other through this. Like, I understood the legal side of it, having worked with children, and that side of dealing with children who are victims of abuse. So I understood that side of it. And I knew what legally was happening. I'm like, they can come up with whatever they want, because I know the legalities of it, and I know they're completely wrong. So that side of it I was confident about, but trying to deal with that and 2 new children plus the child who's severely not coping.
It's not happened to me, but I know if you are a foster parent for any length of time, is very common. It's very common to have allegations against you, and the stress and the, I mean, that's very hard. I can't even imagine, because just being a foster parent, just having, eyes and on you all the time. And then sometimes it's a caseworker who is judging something that a way that you're speaking or disciplining or something in front of them. And it's, what you're doing is very trauma informed, very, rooted in educating myself and just kind of moving us forward in the story. But you had a lot of health issues that came up. And then to me, to
be honest, I think that incident brought around all those health issues. Good
point.
Because, like, the amount of stress and the trauma that we went through trying to deal with what was going on and understanding it, and the fear of potentially, as we were told, well, you might lose your children.
Mm-hmm.
Like, could you imagine?
No, when you just
Like,
4 weeks earlier, you
my body just reacted in this, completely shut down.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, the health issue on top didn't need that, but I did. It happened, and end up going to hospital. And once again, here's my children. I'm in hospital. I should be home with my children.
Yeah.
We've only been home for, I think, 3-4 months by then.
Wow.
So, yes, just too much was going on.
So you have all this, I mean, like if we're like this
Layers.
little container, right? We're just a little container. We're just little containers.
I know.
And you just keep putting it in. And then the final thing that I'm not the final thing, but before you kind of have this big light bulb moment, your marriage.
Oh yeah.
Your marriage is struggling. And obviously, I mean, if we're honest, like that's one of the things that my husband and I have the most challenges in coming together on is our kids, because it's so important. And it's not like we're not like-minded and don't think alike, but
absolutely
in certain situations, it's like, you're coming to it with your background and your baggage, and he's coming to it with his background and his baggage. And here you are dragging all these suitcases, and here we are, we got this family, and we're going to make these decisions, and they're always going to be right and best. And everybody's going to be, it's going to be beautiful. Well, it's not, it's hard.
Not.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what happened? I mean, I know you guys kind of hit some roadblocks. Can you tell us about it?
Sure. So I guess, so the issue that happened was from a particular side of the family. So not that we blamed the other for it. It was just it kind of tarnished one side of the family a little bit for the other side of the family, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So there is that issue that's behind you, even though we didn't want to dwell on it. We didn't want to make it something about us going forward. We moved interstate to get away from everything and to try and start afresh. And, then with my health issue, like a woman who's going through something where, you are pretty much bleeding out for 6 months, hemorrhaging in a sense, and, have an emergency operation and all of that, you need someone there for you. You've got 3 super needy children who have been home with you for less than 6 months. I didn't feel any support. Like, just too much was going on. And I guess it just got out of control in the sense that we just moved so far apart that there was no connection anymore between the two of us.
Yeah, I want to read something. I want to stop you because I think you said this so beautifully. You said, I'm often told I am a strong person, but I certainly do not feel that way. I just want to be held. This makes me cry. I just want to be held and reassured I am okay and loved. I do not get this, and I feel my heart breaking. What is happening to us? Am I jealous? I question myself. Am I wrong to be wanting to feel loved and nurtured? As I write this, I can see how damaged we were and having no one to support us through this, as we had not shared our experiences of the accusation, the health issues with any others. It was because it was just Dan and I for so long, and that now he's busy supporting our daughter. We've not had other supports in our life because it hasn't been needed. And you put a question mark there. This feeling of neglect, and I think that's you're questioning yourself. Even when you're writing this, I think.
Oh yeah, I did.
Is this a need?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me go on.
I was reliving everything I've written. I relived it all. There'd be times I'd be writing my story and I'd just start crying and just have to get myself together and go, you know what? I'm healing from this now. It's okay, Liz, you're doing great. We've come past that. So yes.
Yeah.
I wrote it as I was feeling it.
This feeling of neglect starts eating away at me. And before long, the cracks in the marriage are showing. Petty accusations are flying between the two of us. We sadly use our children to shield ourselves and to turn them for the lack of love and turn to them for the lack of love and support that we both actually need from each other. That is really powerful. I want to read that again. we sadly, we use our children to shield ourselves and we turn to them for the lack of love and support that we both actually need from each other. This is not what I wanted. All I had dreamt about in life was having a family, and it's all going so very badly. I do not want to break up, but I do not see any other option to give us a wake-up call to see what we are doing to ourselves. I think
and
that,
our children. Yeah.
and our children. I think that is so powerful, because I think you're exactly right. Like,
Yeah.
when we don't first acknowledge our own hurts, you know, your
Mhm.
cup was full. Your cup was full.
Yeah.
Your cup was overflowing. And
Yes.
and you were full, and your husband was full, and you, instead of, you know, what we all miss it the first time. Usually we don't seek the support when we first need it, right?
No.
Things kind of have to blow up
They
sometimes.
do. Sadly, they do.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I just think this is so important, because we need to take care of, and this is the cry from the mountaintops that I want to say with Mom as Well podcast, is if we don't take care of ourselves, we're all going to drown. You know, they say
Absolutely.
on
Yes.
the airplane, you know, if the
Your own
oxygen
life.
mask drops, put it on yourself first, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. But we don't.
We don't.
We don't.
Yeah.
It's our
So
self-last.
things
And
are blown
we,
up. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, you're right. We don't do that for ourselves. We're doing it for everyone else, and we forget about ourselves. And that's when I think we're doing it the wrong way around. Not that the children aren't important; they are important. But like I said before, if we are not in a good space, how can everyone else be in a good space?
That's right.
And I think I've learned that coming out the other side of this, is that I need to look after me, and I am so important. It's not me being a big head me, it's me. I need to care for the inner me.
Yeah.
And that's so important.
So what there was, and you mentioned it earlier, but there was something that you read in a mindful parenting magazine, I believe.
I did.
It gave you, and here's I think what it gave you. I think this word, it's not so much about the word, it's the permission the word gave you.
Absolutely. Matrescence.
Matrescence.
You've probably never heard of it before.
I had never heard of it before you.
You're right. And it needs to be out there. It needs to be for every woman, every mother, to have the permission to understand her physical being changes, her emotional being changes. Even for adoptive and foster mothers, your hormonal being changes. Mm-hmm. And your social transition through matrescence is huge. And it doesn't just stop after a few days or weeks or months of motherhood. It goes for life. And your transition through motherhood is for life. Accept it, use it as your permission, grow with it, and understand it. There's so much in it. But for me, it was like an answer to all those questions I had earlier when I was so needy and so looking for something. It was just like this light bulb moment for me, and it's I've got it. This is my goal, is to share this with every woman, every mother, especially adoptive and foster mothers. You are not exempt from matrescence. You are a part of matrescence. And for us, matrescence is even more than what it is in the description. Because we have
tell
additional...
us that description. I can read it, but I'd rather hear it in your words. Explain matrescence. If you think about it, it has the same ending as something like adolescence.
Exactly.
So that helped me understand. If you think about adolescence, or you know, what are the other? There's some other word, pubescence. There's all kinds of words like that.
Yeah.
Well, this is for mothers. Like it's
a
real stage.
Our transition.
It's our transition. Yes.
We've been through the horrible years of adolescence, changing through the teenage years. Weren't they fun?
Now, when we become a mother, we move through change as well.
It is. Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us what it is. Talk about it.
Okay. So motherhood, and you become a mum, you have so much that changes within you. Your brain is completely rewired. We can talk about this from a biological perspective, but even adoptive and foster mothers' perspective, your brain is rewired because your child is now your being. Your child is your everything, nurturing, feeding, caring, all of that. And biologically speaking, your hormones change for the first 6 months to completely devote yourself to that child. And adoptive mums, we are wired. We might not have the hormonal change that wires us to care about that child, but the moment that child comes into our lives, into our arms, our whole focus is them, meeting their needs, getting their attachment, bonding, everything about them. And it changes us as a mother, as our whole perspective of the world here on in. Mm-hmm. We no longer are just floating along, living our lives. Our life becomes focused on the future of our children, the future of what's next, schooling, high school, the children growing up, maturing. Our whole, as a woman, we change completely. And I've even had others say about how, you might be in this career. After you become a mum, you change your career even of what you want to do in life. Why? Because you're setting yourself up for your children. So there's just so much. Our physical changes, we might not change weight-wise, although I lost a lot of weight after our first son because I was so solely focused on him. I became possibly nearly bulimic. But we do, everything about us changes. Emotional. Maybe before we had kids, we didn't cry so much. Right. I don't know, but something in me changed, and now I'm far more emotional and far more in tuned, and just so much about you as a mum that changes. It doesn't have to be because you're a biological mum. Adoptive mums change in all those ways as well. And it's okay.
I love it. And I keep coming back to that word, permission, because permission is what I think we don't give ourselves. We don't give ourselves, matrescence is just, it's just another thing. I mean, there's so many things that adoptive moms are dealing with. That's one of them, right? The way but it's all like, for example, the bonding with a baby that didn't grow inside our uterus, is that where they grow, the uterus?
Yeah, I think so.
And so, I mean, that's a huge deal, dealing with the trauma, dealing with the abandonment, dealing with the Department of Child Welfare. My goodness. Our relationship with our spouse, everything. You're right. There's this balance that we don't easily, it takes time to do. Like, what is for us? What is for them? Do I deserve things for myself anymore? What does that look like?
Exactly.
It's just a mess. I mean, it's beautiful, but we have to give ourselves permission to look for it. Well, I have kept you like super long. I'm just looking at the time. Tell them about your Facebook group.
Okay, so I have a Facebook group called Matrescence for Adoptive and Foster Mothers. And I really want it to be a really safe place for you to share yourself in your rawness, because I know what it's like to be on Facebook groups for adoptive mothers, and there's always someone out there who wants to
No shoulds. No shoulds on this Facebook group. No should, you shouldn't do that, or you should do this.
Absolutely.
None of that.
Because your own story is so unique and so real, and it's okay to be like that. And no matter how hard your story is, you know what? You're doing great, and keep at it, because tomorrow's a new day. We're learning something. We're constantly learning. We're constantly evolving. And I just want every woman to have a safe place to share her story.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for sharing your vulnerability and your authenticity. I know that it's so important for us to do that. It invites others to do the same. So thank you for that. Thank you guys. Thanks for listening. Thank you for following the podcast. Thank you for sharing this podcast. I hope that you are giving yourself permission to take care of yourself, and to know that this is hard work. And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with us. We haven't done it wrong because it's hard. We're just plowing through something that is challenging and difficult, and we're going to need some extra care. So give yourself a hug, give yourself some support, reach out, ask for help, and we'll see you next week.
Mama's way.